alcohol misuse is symptomatic of an unhealed part of you that is present and that is asking for attention, forgiveness, compassion, leaning into being aware of any of those words. It's the wound that is open. It is the wound that is talking. It is the wound that wants some healing and some resolve. We heal with getting the proper tools and support that we need. Don't think you're special with your problems. Don't think that you're alone and that nobody else has them. We all do, and we're all coming to terms with them on our own journey, on our own time, and your time is perfect for you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Flip Your Mindset. Of course, I am your host, Stacey Uhrig, and I have Jessica Betancourt back once again. Jessica was on our podcast at an earlier time, and in that episode, we really talked about Jessica's relationship with alcohol, how it started, when it started, what a few moments were for her to help her recognize that perhaps her relationship with alcohol needed to change and shift. And one of the things that brought Jess and I together is the fact that we're both coaches and we both utilize the same tool with some of our clients, which is Rapid Transformational Therapy, which I just think is one of the best tools out there. So I wanted to have Jess back on today so we can talk about how she reframed her relationship with alcohol. And in the back, before we came on live, I asked Jess, is there a difference between alcohol use disorder, which is the way I was trained on it when I was going through my trauma recovery coaching, understanding that term versus the term alcoholic or alcoholism. And Jess, you mentioned off camera, you felt it's a semantics thing, correct?
I do. I think we're moving away from this outdated language around addiction and how we were speaking earlier, even before we were recording, and I don't know if we were recording at that time, that it is a predisposition, it's a mental illness, and all of these philosophies and schools of thought that are now being looked at differently. And I think alcoholism, you're an alcoholic, that language belongs with a prior school of thought. And we're moving into a place where there's like spectrums of identification within feeling that you use or you are addicted to alcohol. There's more leniency and flexibility in where you find yourself on that spectrum, right? Because if it's just one or the other, I think people have a hard time self-identifying that they even have a problem. Like that was me. I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. Like I definitely would choose life over alcohol. Like this doesn't apply to me. I don't want to go to AA. I don't feel like I have to never be in a bar again. Like that's not me. And so I think that we're waking up more to using a different language that describes trauma, that describes people's personalities and choices and the environment and the lifestyle they're in and all of these other things being factors. And having an addiction to alcohol really being a symptom rather than something that you're bound to have because you were born into that ancestry. And I think that word alcoholism and alcoholic belong to another era that we're really seeing shift and move.
I really want you to go back and address something that you just said, which is, and I don't even want to use the word alcoholism, but the use of alcohol, let's just say it this way.
That's better.
And or maybe the abuse of alcohol, right? Like maybe we're utilizing it in a way that's not helpful to ourselves, is more of a symptom. And I couldn't agree more. And based on all the research I've done and all of the schooling I've had, that is definitely what I perceive. And what would you say that kind of use of a substance is more of a symptom of, Jess?
Alcohol misuse is symptomatic of an unhealed part of you that is present and that is asking for attention, forgiveness, compassion, leaning into being aware of any of those words. It's the wound that is open. It is the wound that is talking. It is the wound that wants some healing and some resolve. It's just, I feel like it's just it's a soul wound symptom that is surfacing, and it doesn't know what to do. It only knows what it has done. And so it's like this frustration of trying to find something that works, that feels better than the maladaptive behavior that has been adopted for a long, long time. Yeah.
So when you talk in this vernacular, using this vocabulary of wounds and parts, that's all that's clear as day to me. But I know that a lot of people that are listening need a little bit more clarity. Mm-hmm. So I want to try to break it down for the listener. When you talk about, alcohol use becomes a part of somebody and the symptom is of an unhealed wound. Okay. I want to get really clear for the listener what that means, because inherently I know what that means. Mm-hmm. When we talk about wound, we're talking about deep rooted feelings that were never properly healed. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So very often when I'm talking about, and I'm putting in air quotes, trauma with my clients, I ask them what their definition of trauma is. Mm-hmm. And it's always very interesting for me to hear what it is for them, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And their knowledge up to that point. And what I try to explain to them, because I try to really make it as simple as possible, is really, look, at the most simplest term, the word trauma is from the Greek word for wound. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's mm-hmm. the word. And what I explain to them is when you have an external wound, you can visually see if it's healing or not. And if you desire to do so, you can nurture that wound that you can see. Mm-hmm. So it will form a scab. Mm-hmm. And as you see the scab forming, it's an indication to you that there's some healing going on physically. And then as long as you don't pick the scab and reopen the wound, at some point, there will be some sort of new skin over it. You may have a scar from that wound, but you can see when actually it's been healed. Mm-hmm. When we have these internal wounds, these emotional wounds, these are wounds of not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling enough, not feeling significant, not feeling important, not feeling worthy of protection, feeling betrayed, feeling rejected, feeling abandoned. Mm-hmm. And that's not all of them. I'm just pulling from what I most of, right? These to me are like your kind of global, universal top 10. Mm-hmm. But this is what the space I'm in most of the time. And when we have that wound internally, and it happens a lot, not once, but it happens on a chronic, pervasive, long-standing basis, there's a few things that happen. One, if we try sharing when we're younger sometimes that we feel this way, unseen, unheard, insignificant, abandoned, rejected, whatever it is, we've heard a lot of things. Oh, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't feel that way. Mm-hmm. Or what are you talking about? That's not accurate. You don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Or we may not have the language to describe the feeling that represents those things because either we just don't have the language for it or this stuff is happening when we're pre-verbal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so now we have this wound. And because we're not being given the opportunity to process it properly by sharing it and having it validated and then being given the appropriate safe space to be able to talk it out and perhaps even reframe it, it stays unhealed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about triggers, what we're really saying is there might be a scab over that thing, maybe just because of time. But as soon as that trigger comes up, the scab comes off the wound, way open again, right? So when we talk about these wounds, right? And alcohol use or substance use being a symptom of an unhealed wound. What we're really talking about is because I haven't healed this emotion and it is so overwhelming to my system and I've never had the appropriate way to process it. So I actually don't know how to process it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a part of me that for my benefit
Mm-hmm.
is going to prevent me or help me from healing this. So if it's going to prevent you from feeling it, it's going to get you intoxicated to the part where you don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
And if that feeling is already up, it's going to come into your benefit to stop that feeling, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
to try to put that fire out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what kind of therapeutic models you use, sometimes you hear of alcohol as a manager, sometimes you hear of alcohol as a firefighter in people's systems. But the reality is it thinks it's doing you a job that's very
Right.
beneficial to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And to your point, and this is really what I wanted to address from episode 1, is that it actually thinks that you're still the age in which you harness this part, in which this part came up into your life
Mm-hmm.
to your benefit, and may not realize that you're decades older and that you actually have more access to more resources in order to now process that wound. Correct?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. So now that I've been able to lay that framework, so guys, just if you have to go back and listen to that 5-minute explanation, just rewind. But I try to make it as clear as possible that that's how things like alcohol use come into play. It's not a maleficent thing. It's not maladaptive at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There's no maliciousness to this part of you. There's no bad part. And I think that that's where alcoholism, the term, gets the bad rap, because when people have to keep overstating that they're an alcoholic when they've changed their relationship with alcohol and they no longer use, they continue to shame themselves because the alcohol is actually not a bad part. It might have created a lot of bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
It might have created a lot of bad behaviors. And I put bad in quotes, behaviors that didn't have a positive outcome for you
Mm-hmm.
while it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no bad part that comes up in your system. The parts that show up in our system all think that they are your ride or die BFF,
Mm-hmm.
here for the long haul,
Mm-hmm.
here to help you. And by the way, there's no part that knows how to do it better than me. And more than that, I know better than you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than yourself, your authentic self. I've got you. Go
Mm-hmm.
sit in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive. Okay.
It's so true.
So, right. Okay. So now that we've created that landscape, you mentioned to me in our other episode, as we know, we're both rapid transformational therapy practitioners, that you were working with people on anxiety and depression and some of these other things. You had even had some RTT yourself, but you had not utilized it with your relationship to alcohol. Is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at what point did you decide to do some RTT for alcohol use?
Well, remember in our training, you do, I think it's 1 or 2 practice sessions with
like our reflective practice.
Yeah, reflective practice.
Yeah.
So it's a free therapy. What do you want help with? What would you like to work on? And what just kept coming up for me was that's what I needed and wanted to work on. And I was like, this is my opportunity just to see. Let me just see what happens. I'm going to request my session, my reflective session. Should I say more about that? Or I think it's pretty clear. Like,
sure, absolutely. I mean, we do this practicing when you're becoming a practitioner of any kind of therapeutic model.
Yeah.
You're going to be put into these triads over and over and over again, where you're practicing the model, right? And for the person, and you're giving it in one session, right, as the practitioner, and then in another session, you're going to be working with someone, and you're going to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So free therapy. So like, what do you want your free therapy on from your peer? Side note, I was also smoking hand-rolled cigarettes, which I'd been doing for a long time. And my first thought was, well, I need to quit smoking. So I had my initial RTT session, or one of my preliminary peer sessions for quitting smoking, and it worked amazingly. And I was like, wow, this is so magical. I just quit smoking overnight after 20 plus years. Let me see what happens with my alcohol use. And so I had my RTT session with this lovely man. I won't say his name, but he's amazing. And I just felt so comfortable. I felt so heard. I felt so seen. I felt like I could say things that I hadn't said before. I felt like what I thought it was about, it was nothing about. I was just so surprised at what I had been saying. So in an RTT session, dear listeners, if you're a listener of Stacey, so I'm sure you know, but you get to hear and see your subconscious tape as if it were like a record, and you can like stop it and pause it and like, what? Like I say that over and over and over again all the time. Yes, you do.
So can you paint a picture for the audience on what that looks like? I really want them to get a clear picture on this.
Okay.
So give like maybe an example of a scene or something that maybe came up for you and what your interpretation was.
I'll give you two examples. One is really simple, and it's the repetitious things that people say as throwaways, right? Like, oh, I can't, I'm so dumb. Casually, right? Not even in deep hypnosis, not in the session. Oh, I'm so dumb, sorry. Oh, I'm so silly of me. Oh, so how stupid. Things like that, like seemingly casual things that people say all the time about themselves, are blueprint instruction for how then you go behave. And then we don't know that, right? I know people in my family who say these types of things, and when I bring it to their attention, they're like, I don't say that. Like, do you want me to I'll tape record you next time and I'll play it for you. You say it all the time. You say it all the time, how forgetful you are. And then like, where's your keys and where's your phone? You literally are telling yourself that you have no memory. And here it is, evidence. And so that's one, just the casual, seemingly harmless things that we say out loud or to ourselves. And then the second, and I'm sure that there's more, is when you do RTT, you do RTT regression type therapy, where you're brought back in your subconscious, traveling through time. Essentially, I call it like time travel, or flipping a Rolodex backwards and streaming backwards. I have people visualize a tunnel sometimes, like some sort of sense of creating like a physical smallness and a retraction with the body, right? And so when you're brought back through time, and your RTT practitioner will ask you questions or prompts to elicit a scene, or some even like symbolism, or a word or a phrase, or like some inkling of information that your subconscious is offering you regarding the situation that you're in therapy for. And it will come up like watching a movie sometimes. That often happens, or like looking at a picture. And when you see it with your adult mind, what happened to you when you were younger, you can decode it differently. And you can see within this milieu, that's the word I want, like this scene, this like looking at a diorama of your life. And it's like, that's not me anymore, but it is. And you're able to think with, it's interesting. I feel like you're able to think with two minds, right? You're able to think with the mind of the younger you, at the same time having this compassionate observer, which is mostly part of the older, more mature you that wants to move away from this issue. And you can see, oh, for example, I didn't tie my shoes right the first time when my dad told me to put my shoes on because I was late, and it's like, hurry up, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. And it's like, why can't I ever pass a test? Oh, because I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to understand. It's somebody else's words that are imprinted in your psyche that you carry with you, you adopt as your own, and you bring them through time into the expression of, and that, like, I am really fond of saying also, our beliefs are factoring our habits, right?
There's no question.
No question about it. But people don't, a lot of us, I didn't know this for a long time either, that you can stop that train by slowing it down, Meditation. Also, I teach all of my clients to meditate in a very specific way so they can see and hear themselves, kind of like mini RTTs every morning. You slow it all down. You slow it all down. We're all going 1,000 caffeinated miles an hour, and you slow it down, and you're able to see the building blocks of your belief system and how they have an origin somewhere. You are not born thinking that you're stupid. You are not born thinking that you can't handle stress. We adopt these, we stamp them, we bring them with us, they become infused in our identity. And it's really, RTT is so valuable to me because I haven't really found, there are other tools I use, as I'm sure you do too, but to break apart this intertwining of a belief and a habit and identity and how it's really not you, it's a construct. So if you can see those things as separate, you can see them as individual, you can see them as, I don't really care for this part anymore. What does this need? What sort of tending is needed here so that this part is not so angry or hurt or sad? That is the wound. The wound is attached to parts of us that, as you say, become triggered. And I'm a huge Joe Dispenza fan. Maybe you are too.
Yeah.
But the beliefs, the wound have an emotional signature in our body. Like energetically, we feel elated when something specific happens. Energetically, we feel saddened when something triggers us that opens that wound that it might not even be relative. If you look at, like a picture of a stop sign could have you bursting into tears and you wouldn't know why. Like, oh, because of that horrific car accident that I was in, something like that. Right. It's just a ball of string all wound up, and we have to gently disentangle. Yeah. So we can see what it is that we're working with.
And I think what's so lovely and thank you for that illustration. We all as practitioners, we're in there and we're helping them, to your point, pull apart this ball of yarn. I always feel when I'm taking clients back to what you called a scene, I call it a scene as well, or I just call it like a milestone moment in your life, that you're kind of watching a version of your life from this drone's eye view. And it's almost like reminds me of in The Christmas Carol, when the main character is being taken to all of these different times in his life, and he's watching it through a window, or he's watching it from the corner of the room, and he's seeing how he was, and he's having this reflection and this clarity. It's kind of like that. Like you are able to see and feel and hear and experience a moment that you had when you were younger. As the adult version of yourself, and it gains you great clarity of, wow, in that moment, I was feeling those things, but then I also chose to do this because I didn't know how to process it. And then those choices created the belief system that I had of either I need to stay big, or I need to stay small, or I need to be seen or not seen, or whatever these beliefs were. It's my job to make sure everybody's happy all the time. I have to be the peacekeeper. I have to, whatever it is. And you get to reframe it in that moment and go, yes, I did do that when I was 10 or 8. And I did create that, but I'm 55 now. And now I know I have access to ABC, XYZ. And that was an unfortunate situation, but it's not relevant anymore. And so you start to be able to see things with clarity, but reframe it in the moment. So with regards to your drinking, what did you see clearly, and what were you able to reframe in that moment?
It's a great question. And it's, and I do this with people now for a living, and I see so much there's a lot of commonality, but everyone's origin story is really unique. And for me, though, it was that I didn't know that I drink every day in the evening, at dinner time. And there's a lot of overlapping reasons why people's habit signature looks the way it does. But one of my main ones was that I'm stressed. I'm a mom. I deserve to have wine, and I'm going to have it at the end of my day because I work so hard.
I earned it.
Stress reliever. Yeah, it's a stress reliever. And what came up for me in my RTT session was a scene with my dad, and I was a teenager, and I was being yelled at for wearing something that he didn't want me to wear. And said to myself at that time, and I noticed that I said this a lot, and I heard my kids saying it, so I was like, I better not say this, which is, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle your anger. I can't handle my stress. Like, I can't handle it. Should have, like, a picture of me with like that slogan under it. I said that for years. I can't handle it. And it was just like me confirming to myself that I can't handle life, the lows especially, but I just can't handle it. It's too stressful. I can't handle it. My belief was that I couldn't handle stress, or that I couldn't manage upset. So therefore I needed this. And that's how I validated it to myself, because we have to be in self-validation of what we're doing, or we have to. That's how we survive. We make it okay. We rationalize it. We self-validate. And that's what mine was. And that was a big one for me. So it was like right there under my nose. I said it every day, all the time. I can't handle it. I'm so stressed.
And what was the reframe? You actually can handle it.
Yeah, I can handle it. This is not that bad. This is not that awful. I really need to go outside. I need to stop what I'm doing and cry. I did a lot of bawling when I let go of my daily drinking, like a lot of crying. And I tell people to watch for this as a sign that it's working. As like, it doesn't mean that you're having a nervous breakdown. You are letting things break down a bit. It's not an indicator that anything is wrong with you. You're on the right track. Your hormone system needs to rebalance. You have to throw off a lot of this. And it's like, it's coming out of you. Be grateful.
I'll tell you, it's so interesting that you said that, because you're just making me think. Summer of 2022 was like, I'm not saying it was a clusterfuck for me in a bad way, but there was like a lot of shit coming up for me to have to learn through at a very rapid pace in a very short period of time. Mm-hmm. It was just a really, really, really tough summer. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of pressure being put on me to act in a way and behave in a way and take on a role that I had always taken on in my family and in my life that I was ready to let go of. Mm. But they were not ready for me to let go of it. Mm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it was a way I showed up. It was how I was known in my family. It was what was comfortable for me, because I knew how to do it really well. It was a very protective role. I've always been the protector in the family. Mm-hmm. And I recognized through my own work over the years that not only is that not a role that I want, it was one that I took on as required, but then I got a lot of praise for it, but it wasn't relevant in helping me anymore. And it was putting me in positions that I did not want to be in anymore. So I worked with a trauma coach the whole summer to literally, quote unquote, take that cape off. And when I finally made the decision, and it was funny because I had my husband in these sessions for me. This was happening within my extended family, not within my, immediate family, but I wanted him in the sessions with me to hold me accountable, to not slip back into this old behavior. Okay. So think about it. It could be drinking. It could be the protector role. It can be any kind of behavior. Right. Mm-hmm. And I made a decision on a Thursday. I was done. No matter how hard I was going to be pushed externally from other people, I was not going to put this cape on one more time. And I had an acupuncture session for myself the next day, and I bawled like I've never cried before the entire way to that session. It was like a half-hour drive. And I knew what was happening in my system. My nervous system was so uncomfortable with this new habit of not taking on this role, not falling back in. And I have it still here on my desk. I had found this quote from Deepak Chopra, and it said, "Every time you are tempted to react in the same old way, Ask yourself if you want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of a new future.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept reading it over and over again. But to your point, you know it's working if you're crying. I called my husband when I got to where I was going and I said, I don't know what that just was, but I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was something with the crying that was a literal discomfort, but it was also like a grief of this is the way I used to show up and that's dead now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had to thank that part of me, the protector part, for all the work it did do for me, but that I didn't need it anymore. But it was kind of like saying goodbye to your best friend a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you recognize that when people are changing that habit with whatever substance it is, but we'll just use alcohol as an example?
Yes, I see it in almost everybody. That's the feedback that I get. I didn't expect to be that sad. I didn't expect to have that anger outburst. I just wasn't expecting that. And I'm like, yeah, that is healing. You're doing it correctly. That is what happens. That is the release of years of buildup that is underneath all of this trying to make it better and make it okay. It has to come out, and it's coming out now. And so, like you said, you can thank it. Also, I think it's really important to help people be aware of, like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen on some level, in some capacity. And then the more you can lean into your own capacity for allowing it, the quicker you will get to the place where you want to be.
Listen, nobody said healing feels good, guys.
No, but it's so worth it.
It's so worth it. And I'm very aware that Jessica has, a hard stop because, we're parents and she has to go get her kids, and I respect that. So I want to wrap it up. But guys, obviously we have covered so much good shit in these 2 episodes. So I want to remind people, this interview with Jessica is a part 2 of the interview that we started earlier. And the link to that show note for episode 1, or part 1, I should say, with Jess is going to be right there in the show notes. And in that episode, she really talks about how her relationship with alcohol became disordered, how it went from being an adaptive coping strategy to a maladaptive coping strategy. And we kind of touched a little bit on the why. And then, of course, in this episode, we really kind of got into more of the deeper subconscious things that were at play, what I like to call the root cause for the behavior. And obviously, Jess knows her shit. She knows what she's doing. I love the way that she has turned this pain into a purpose. And I know she's a great RTT practitioner. So if this episode spoke to you, if your relationship with alcohol or something in your life is not the way that you would like the relationship to be, there's 2 things I want you to know. Number 1, it can change. It is possible. And number 2, there's someone who's been through it that can guide you and be the guide with you through that process. And that's Jess. So in order to learn more about Jess, I recommend that you go to her Instagram handle, which is the Mindful Drinking Movement. And that will obviously be in the show notes as well. Jess, is there anything that you want to share or say as we wrap up so you can hop in that car safely and confidently to go get those kiddos? Yeah.
Thank you. I walk everywhere. I like walking. I prefer walking.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in an area that promotes that as well. So
yes, in the city. I would like to say to anyone who's listening, who's resonating with what Stacey and I are talking about, that to really acknowledge for yourself that things are flexible and changeable, and that we're meant to change. Like, we are meant to change. We're growing and evolving organisms. Like, it goes against our nature to not change. And so if there's something that you feel stuck about in life that you can't get past, get support for it. Get in communities where other people are talking about that thing. Feel less shameful and secretive about your thing. There's guaranteed millions of other people that are experiencing the same. Community. We heal in community. We heal by being visible. We heal with getting the proper tools and support that we need. So please, this is going to sound rude, but I'm going to say it. Don't think you're special with your problems. Don't think that you're alone and that nobody else has them. We all do. And we're all coming to terms with them on our own journey, on our own time. And your time is perfect for you. So on that note, there's also nothing wrong with you. I say that to everybody I work with, and I put it in their recording. There's nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing.
That's right.
You're a human being.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Perfect way to end it again, guys. It is the Mindful Drinking Movement. It's Jess Betancourt live from Europe. Thank you so much, Jess. We loved having you on. And guys, if you like this episode, you can catch this one and all your favorite episodes from Flip Your Mindset by just simply hitting subscribe. The more subscribers, the better. Leave even a rating. That would be great. But the reason that you want to subscribe is so you can be notified, because I drop a new cast just like this one every single week. Thanks so much, Jess.
Amazing. Thank you, Stacey.
This episode